So it says your proposal must stimulate action or acceptance of an idea. Follow 4 steps. Determine your purpose, analyze your audience, state and support your main message, and urge the audience to take action. Translate features into audience benefits. Use the inverted pyramid format. Be sure to use visual aids to support your objective and main message. Plan to deal with audience questions effectively. Looking forward to this, so without further ado, ready?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Justin.
Can everyone see this? Good. My name is Bruce Four. I'm
a fellow Toastmaster, and my project today is actually coming from the Advanced Communication series. These are a series of, in particular, technical briefings. This particular briefing is to convince a leadership team of a particular course of action I think we should be taking. And in this case here, all of you represent our trio at the district level. That's the division director and his team. In particular, a course of action I think we are going to be taking is, in particular, the Pathways program. Now let's try that. All right, let's get started. Many of you here, fellow Toastmasters, are aware of the Pathways program. Over the last roughly 10 months, we have been moving forward in the rollout of Pathways. In particular, when we started in January, one of the most important things that needed to get done was to contact all of the units, all of the clubs out there, explain to the club leadership what Pathways consisted of, what they could expect, how we plan to implement it with an effective rollout date of April-May timeframe. It's a huge undertaking. In fact, a team of 18 individuals were put together, Pathway ambassadors and Pathway guides. Our job was to go out to those 169 clubs, provide overviews of Pathways, answer any particular questions. Once those initial overviews and presentations were done, we were, each of us, required to conduct a series of 15 virtual sessions to train the leadership and anyone interested in the Pathways program so that when the new training year started, everyone was pretty much on board. One of the challenges we now face is how effective have we been? Based on some of the information that I've been looking at over the last 3-4 month time frame, I have certain concerns. I don't think the implementation has been fully successful. I believe we have a very low diffusion rate and adoption of this new innovation. Pathways has pretty much been a disruption to our usual course of business. Many of you who are familiar with the traditional program are very comfortable with it. It has been in place for roughly about 15 years. The dual track system of the communication series and the leadership series, the advanced communications and the advanced leadership series were just a normal course of action that people were quite familiar with. However, Pathways, Toastmasters International realized that it was time to change the entire format, as well as the particular focus in leadership and communications, because their internal numbers represented a totally different story, which they have not shared with us. But we can understand that roughly 5 years ago, when they started talking about Pathways, they tested it, they refined it, they put in place the systems, the infrastructure, and then they told the districts and the regions what they were going to do. An effective rollout date of Pathways was to start as of 2017, and over the 9-10 regions that represents all of Toastmasters International, they began rolling out the projects or the program into each of those regions. Region 9, which our district 83 falls under, and which these clubs also are a part of, was one of the last regions to be using the new Pathways program. How many here at this point are enrolled in Pathways, by show of hands? Okay, and the rest of you, I take it, are still in the traditional program. Here's my intent. Enhance the diffusion and adoption of the new Pathways program at the club level. That's where we are right now. Create local in-house Academy Excellence teams to support and drive diffusion of Pathways. Develop strong toolkits that will support the user interface and the infrastructure issues that I will talk about in a few minutes, and to do this over the next 90 days. Under Pathways, there are 10 separate paths: dynamic leadership, effective coaching, innovative planning, leadership development, motivational strategies, persuasive influence, presentation mastery, strategic relationships, team collaboration, and visionary communication. These are the paths that you can expect to enroll on. Any one of those will provide a very granular approach to areas that you might be of interest in that will benefit your career or your own personal goals in life. All of these projects are structured pretty much in the same way. There are 5 core competencies that we will be focusing on: public speaking, interpersonal communication, strategic leadership, and management. Those 4 core competencies are embedded in all of these paths. The 5th competency, which is called confidence, that's something that happens as you begin to work through the projects. When you stand into this space, taking on those leadership roles, whether it's the art counter, the timer, the grammarian, you're developing confidence. You're also getting to use other aspects of your skill set. That's where that confidence comes into play. And the way those competencies are developed across the 10 paths, they're emphasized in different ways, but they pretty much will cover the same competency, so that you can expect, upon completion of these 5 levels in each of the paths, to be at least competent in one of those, in these areas. So, it's been 5 months, with the rollout officially starting as of April, May, June, July, August, September, October, roughly 6 months. How are we doing with pathways? Oops. Let me back up. I'll back up again. Getting back to the 5 levels, those are the 5 levels. The first 3 levels will emphasize on the emphasis will be placed on communication skills, developing the groundwork, the foundations of what you need to know in order to become a better speaker, as well as to put together more effective presentations. Levels 4 and 5 will actually concentrate in communications and leadership, particularly to those 10 paths. So going back to my original question, how are we doing? Well, as of October 16th, in a review of all the District 83 reports, what we see here in front of us represents 2 programs: the traditional program at the bottom and pathways at the top. Out of 2,709 active members in this district, there are 18 level 1s. There are 3 level 2s. And there are 5, and there's actually 1 level 3. You would expect, over the 5 months, plenty of time for many of our experienced Toastmasters to enroll in the program to be at a larger count in terms of the level number 1s, as well as the level number 2s. And yet we have a very low count of less than 1% of that total. If we look at this curve here, where we're talking about diffusion and adoption of new ideas and thoughts, typically with innovators under a curve of this nature, about 2.5% will automatically grab onto that new technology or that new skill or idea and embrace it fully and start learning how to use it. We see that across all industries and across all types of services as well. And then we see early adopters. They tend to be the individuals who are what we call knowledge-based users, knowledge leaders in that particular profession. So those first 2 curves areas on those curves that we're more interested in trying to get to. And yet we're less than 1% of that number. What is causing such a low turnout and participation rate in pathways? Why is it that we're having these challenges? Why is it that clubs don't seem to be embracing the technology? There are some reasons. Here are some of the barriers of diffusion of this new knowledge. Our technology infrastructure is highly variable and fluid between and within the user session. And what that simply means is everyone has different types of computers. Some are using desktop computers, some are using notebooks, some are using iOS, some are using Windows, and the experience is variable across that. That's one of the issues. The internet-working capabilities. The Toastmasters International site is one part. The work is normally handed off to a secondary site, which is the Cornerstone on Demand. And those servers, the trade-off between those two are introducing additional latency issues. So what we're seeing as well, once an individual is able to get onto the website and actually engaging in a session, there tends to be huge latency problems where screens load very slowly or sometimes not at all. And the session will actually time out. Then we get to the user technology equipment. That's each individual, what they have. Some, as I mentioned again, desktop computers, laptops, tablets. There's always going to be a different experience. And then there's the operating system, and then, not but least, the actual browser. Some individuals use Chrome, Safari, Mozilla, a wide variety of different browsers, and each of those browsers tend to handle those sessions slightly different. So you have all these different layers that are creating problems and challenges for our users out there. As a result, most people who actually get onto the site, log on to Toastmasters International, end up leaving with a very unpleasant experience. And then last but not least, then there is the user interface. Once you get onto Basecamp, it's very difficult to navigate and to use the system. People get confused. That's what we're finding out is happening at this point. And then, of course, there are the social and communication channels. We have traditionalists, people like you and I, Luddites in a sense, who say, I'm not going to go into this Pathways because I don't need it. I already got my designations. Why do I need this new product? Here again is the actual website, which you can expect when you see that. And that's actually the Basecamp. Basecamp allows you to get into your particular path and begin doing the work. And what we're finding here, when you get into Basecamp, log into the, access the second tile, which is My Education Transcript, that's where the problem begins. Here's what I propose we do over the next 90 days. Form what we call Academy Excellent teams. And those teams will actually consist of the Basecamp leaders, which are the presidents of the club, vice president of education, and the secretary. And also mentors within the club. Those individuals who have a certain amount of experience under their belt, those are the individuals that we want to go after and start training them, providing them with additional knowledge and resource. We'd like to do that over the next 90 days, which represents the actual schedule, which is, and training, full on-site Academy Excellent training sessions, 2 per club, to be also supplemented with additional 2 virtual training sessions just to those teams, so those teams become proficient and knowledgeable about how to use the Pathways interface, how to anticipate particular problems. And one of the other challenges with bandwidth, we want to also create what we call a level 1 toolkit. And the level 1 toolkit will be maintained at every club, which actually has all of the PDF files of the projects, as well as the evaluations embedded on site, so that individuals who have problems with the technology can grab those PDFs and use them in real time and continue with the path that they're currently embedded on. Over that 90-day window, we'll do an after-action review afterwards. Here's an example of level 1, the icebreaker projects, evaluation and feedback, researching and presenting. That's what the toolkit will look like. Here's your mentoring program. I won't address that at this point. That's going to lead us into another project later on. And that concludes pretty much where we need to go with the excellent teams. Are there any questions? So at this point, this concludes the presentation. We can move on to the Q&A.
Bruce,
Yes.
I know you mentioned one of the barriers or challenges is the old timers are used to the old system. They were going through their program, and now they don't see reason to change. So what would be your counter argument, or how would you persuade someone? Why go Pathways if you're already used to the old program and you're doing that?
And that's a very important question. One of the most important things here is that we have to kind of reposition what a user can expect from the Toastmaster program. One of the challenges that happened in the traditional program where we were turning out more communicators, people who were good speakers, but their leadership skills were marginal at best. We were not raising their leadership skills. In the Pathways program, leadership and communications is embedded and entwined through all of the levels. So it forces that individual, no matter how uncomfortable they are, to get into this leadership space, get practice, get development, and become familiar with what they need to do as leaders. So that's one of the benefits, is helping you truly become a leader at the club level. That's one of the key benefits of going into the new program. The second benefit of the new program is just the sheer diversity. There's so many different granular skill sets that apply directly into the kind of work that you may do that you'll find is clearly defined and represented in each of these paths. So that's 2 of the benefits that we can talk about. And the other thing, the third most important benefit, is that Pathways is not going away. Within the next 2-year cycle, our traditional program will be finished as of June 2020. There won't be anything else other than Pathways. So those are some of the plus sides of it. It's going to be a matter of when we go down to these units and talk to the base camp leaders as well as the mentors, enrolling them and convincing them that here are some of the pluses of the Pathways program. Any other questions? Yes.
Are you providing any solutions for the virtual aspect? That there's an issue with connectivity?
The problem with the answer to that is no. And the reason why is that with any of the technologies that are out there, we're dealing with so many different kinds of individuals who have their own unique configurations. There's no way we can actually adjust to them one-on-one. We just don't have the resources. What we need to do is be able to engage the user at a level where they can share with their fellow club members the technology. That is working. That's why we have this toolkit where you can actually read the materials that you need to move through each of the modules at level 1. Level 1 is going to be the biggest challenge because that's really the entry point to get into the other levels, levels 2, 3, 4, and 5. So to address your question, there is no real one solution with the technology issue because there are just so many different individuals bringing their own technology, plugging in, trying to access these servers. Any other question? Yes?
I probably missed it in your presentation. You probably addressed it. I want to kind of piggyback off this question. Are you saying that Toastmasters is going to rebrand and change the actual positioning of the group when it comes to leadership and expressing how this is going to be beneficial for them moving forward? I heard you say that, but I know that in my experience, when I think Toastmasters, I'm thinking communication skills and improving that ability, not necessarily leadership or the other things that are mentioned. So is that going to be a total rebrand so that anybody that thinks Toastmasters, they're thinking a place where I can improve my leadership skills, where I can improve my ability to lead a team, manage a team, and not singularly your ability to communicate, or is that like a secondary thing? That's not still, I kind of heard what you said when you asked your question, but that's what sparked in my mind, like, is that going to be the entire undertaking?
Okay, that's a very good question. To answer your question right off, the rebranding, there is no rebranding. Toastmasters brand is solid. It is consistent. When most people think of Toastmasters, they're thinking about communications and leadership. The challenge has been the implementation of the leadership part was uneven. We're coming back to the original principles of both are equally important and they're not optionals. Here again, going back to the old traditional program, they had split it along leadership and communication. This new process embeds both, and it puts an overlay, which we call that user interface, which is using the technology as well. We now have to find a way to make sure that the synergy still exists and that we are putting in the leadership part of the equation again, getting back to our original roots. So the brand isn't changing. We're just making sure that the implementation changes and shifts. Any final questions? I'm not sure how much time we have because I see the red light. I'm not sure if you...
I'm not sure if I was supposed to do each question separately or...
Well, no. How much time was that, by the way?
That was 5 minutes already.
Okay, so that concludes this presentation.